Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. I'm going to have a story up within the next couple of days about how the Commanders have gone about trying to improve their roster to help a rookie quarterback. And I'll get into that on the podcast at some of their points too with other guests. I'll have Bram Weinstein on soon. Probably going to talk a little bit about that. So, anyways, look for that on ESPN.com sometime in the next couple of days. And don't forget, you can always become a club member of the show. You go to the use your laptop, go to the Empire Media YouTube page. You'll see the word join. Click on that. Choose your level of membership. And for you gold members, going to be doing another private Zoom very soon, probably next week. So stay tuned for information on that. Anyway, let's get to today, because today, I'm recording this on Wednesday. You're probably watching this on Thursday morning. Wednesday was the LSU Pro Day, which means the Jayden Daniels Pro Day for Commanders fans. And one thing to know, and I've told you this before, and you know this, you're smart enough to know that how they throw on air is not as relevant as pretty much everything else. The measurements, the interactions with teammates, all the little things that away from throwing the ball that are going to make an impact. Because if you really want to know how Jayden Daniels throws the ball, go put on the film. You want to know how fast he runs? Go put on the film. Because guess what? Guys weren't catching him when he would run downfield. He would make guys miss. Now, yes, he got hit a few times, more than a few times, and he did get hit hard a couple times. But you can kind of watch the film and say, that dude is fast. What's his 40 time? Doesn't matter. Some of these guys for the combine, for pro days, they're training for their 40 times. Then, some of the guys who are already fast, they don't train for the 40 times as much. So, it may look different or whatever. Bottom line is the film shows how fast Jayden Daniels is. The film shows what kind of a passer he is. And Dan Orlovsky brought this up on NFL Live, and just that you want to watch some of the pro day throws, go put on the film. Go, and he pointed out a couple of examples of throws that Jayden Daniels made in games that would be pro day throws. So in other words, you want to watch the pro day throws, put on the film. So anyways, but the other interactions are something that I think is very noteworthy. And I think that's a couple of things I want to talk to. Obviously, I was not there. We had a reporter, Catherine Terrell from ESPN, who covers the Saints. She was there. So she has a story up on ESPN right now, and you can go read that. But there are a couple of things that in watching the coverage of it, et cetera, that stood out. And I want to go over a couple of things. And not all of it. Some of it's going to be pertain to reporting I've already had. And again, even talking to Commanders officials, and you brought up the throwing, is like, he's thrown on air. You should do well. So again, don't get wowed by all that. We know his arm is good. It's not as strong as Drake May's, but it's a good arm, and it's good enough for the NFL, period. So one of the things that did stand out, there are a couple of things. One, Sam Fortier from the Washington Post tweeted out a couple of videos of Jayden Daniels in action, and just, like little things. There are two things he tweeted out that I think were noteworthy. And one of which was after Malik Neighbors ran his 40-yard dash time, and it was a really good 40 time. I think it was around like 4.35, something like that. But the guy who ran down after him to celebrate with him was Jayden Daniels. And, now, could some of this stuff be that, hey, the camera's on you? Maybe, because you whatever. But that's a jaded take. I tend to look at the other side and say, like, this is the guy who was excited for his teammate. He also wore the number of one of his teammates from LSU, and I want to make sure I get it right. It's Greg Brooks Jr., who missed most of his senior season at LSU because he was diagnosed with a brain tumor in September. So if you watch the coverage, you'll see a Brooks Jr. with the number 3 on there. That again, Kat tweeted out. So that's what he did, that to draw attention to him. And also Daniel said that one of the reasons why he didn't want to work out at the combine was because he wanted to get more people to come down to his pro day, which in turn would help some of his teammates who are also trying to be drafted. Now, he also, again, didn't have to work at the combine. He's going to be a top pick. And even with this one, again, I saw some people say, oh, you should run the 40 time, create this buzz. Guy's going to be a top pick, not top pick in the draft. Certainly seems like Caleb Williams is going to be that guy, but he's going to be a top pick, so he didn't need to create that buzz. The buzz was created by his Heisman Trophy winning campaign. And then the more the offseason's gone on, like the buzz is there. So anyway, so that's one of the things he did. And that's, when you hear people talk and when the coaches talk about him, they say that's just kind of the kind of guy he is. Daniels, as far as the leadership goes, is considered, he's a quieter guy, but it doesn't mean he's not a leader. And I think that's something that I'd be curious to see how that develops for him. But, certainly if teammates are responding to him, that's what a leader is, right? Guys who respond, if guys respond to you, that means you're doing something right. The other thing that Daniels talked about was from what he wanted to show at his pro day. And again, according to Kat in her story, said the main thing was just trying to sell my consistency within the pocket, my form. The other stuff was kind of fun. This was just something we do. We're out here having fun. We hear the music playing, the deep ball. That's kind of to show that they've got the speed to track the football, and then I can go out there and put it out there for them. Deep ball was pretty much one of his strengths. And one of the things that when you listen to Washington coaches, they talk about wanting the deep ball accuracy. They want a guy who can process quickly. I can tell you, they think that Jayden Daniels processes quickly. And you watch the film, and that is evident because you can see him going through the progressions. And, that's something that I think that he does pretty well. Again, by the way, going back to the not leadership stuff, but just kind of the personality stuff. Sam Fortier also had another video showing Jayden just kind of walking around, shooting the basketball, just kind of getting ready, getting loose. Walking behind the scouts and all that, just walking over the crowd, sees Adam Peters, daps him up. They kind of had a nice little exchange, and then they part because they're there to do different things. But that is something that also happened. So the other thing is he was going to meet with Washington among other teams. I think it was for like a 30-minute interview or so. And so like that's another thing. And I would assume that they're going to meet with him in a top 30 visit in Ashburn. So, so that's part of it. But for all the skills he has, it still goes back to the tape. Again, feeling is processes quickly. And one of the stats that has come up with him, with the analytics crowd online, is the pressure to sacks ratio. And it's an interesting number. And we talked about it with Sam Howell during the season, and how the number that he was at was not a sustainable number for a career. Now it got a lot better, and it was still a higher number, but it was one that was not in the dangerous territory. It was more just a high number, but it's a number that does, if the guys who have a high number, it's like you don't have as long a career. But and with Daniels, his number for his college career was high. I think it was around 24 some percent. That's a high number. I think last year was around 20, a little over 20%. So he definitely improved. But I think what you have to do is also contextualize that stat. And I would say the same thing for any player, but you have to contextualize that stat to see, okay, why was it a high pressure to sack ratio? And here's the other thing to note. I have talked to a number of coaches, and I ask them, like, what do you look for when you're watching and when you're evaluating a college quarterback? And not one of them has ever brought up that stat. I think I told you that before. And I did have one scout who said, yeah, their analytics department will compile all that stuff. I'm sure Washington's is doing the exact same thing because they're very, very big on that. But the scouts and the coaches take it over from there. And it's one of those things that's like, it's a number that they have. It's not the top number by any means. Do they look at that and say, oh my gosh, this is a high pressure to sack, you can't take the guy? No, not a chance. But you have to go back and then look at, again, to me, the whole question is, why was the number high? And so with Daniels, when you go back, I mean, I spent a lot of time watching all of his sacks. And I've still got a couple more to get to, because I'm just going through some stuff. And like, as of right now, it's probably almost 75-80% of the sacks. The problem is, or not, the thing is with it, it's not like there are a lot of cases of him just holding on the ball for 3-4 seconds and not getting through progressions and then taking a sack. That's not the case. When I'm an Ohio State guy, I watched Justin Fields in college. The knock on him was that he held the ball too long. And you know what? You saw it. Terrific college quarterback. But you saw what people were talking about in that area. And then you get to the NFL and it's the same thing. He held the ball too long times, made some huge plays, but he held the ball too long at times, and it's just harder to keep getting out of trouble when you're doing that. But with Daniels, a lot of times, at some point, I'm going to go over all this more in depth because I want to break it down more. But just in a general way, right now, the more of the sacks happen within like a little over 2 seconds, like 2.1 or so, which is some of those are blitzes that either weren't picked up, and sometimes by Daniels. Sometimes you look at, okay, there's 6 blockers, you have 6 blockers and 7 are coming. You've got to be the guy that somehow adjusts off that and however it is or getting rid of the ball. Other times, I'm not sure that LSU always had an answer for the quarterback. So in other words, like if it's a situation where there's somebody coming, either if you don't have a hot route or you stop the film and guys are all none of them are turned around, or not only not turn around, but you couldn't even get it to him with an anticipation throw. So that's not on the quarterback. So there were a handful of those. There were a couple times where I felt like he went through a couple of the progressions and it's like, okay, it's breaking down. And either he tried to get out of the pocket the wrong way, or he tried, or like at other times he might squeeze through this gap and turn it into 30 yards. Well, this time it turned into a 2-yard loss. So there are a handful of different reasons why. If there was a theme of holding onto the ball too long, to me, that number would be more telling for what he might do in the NFL. I just don't think that it was as telling in that regard as it was for Justin Fields. And I think that guy was a terrific college quarterback and I loved watching him, but that was an issue. And the theme with him was that he held the ball too long. I just don't see the same thing with Jayden Daniels. I think there are definitely things he's got to learn. He's got to learn to get down a little bit quicker at times, take far fewer hits. And it's not like every hit results in a crunching hit. I mean, there's sometimes a guy gets tripped up. Sometimes you get hit. You're able to kind of slide away from the hit. You still get down, but there are definitely times where you got crunched. I mean, you see it. You definitely see it. So that would be a concern. Can you improve a little bit in that? But mostly because of the frame. So the one thing he did measure at 6'3" and 3/8 and 210 pounds. He's going to have to learn how to protect himself. And, Kirk Cousins is about 6'3" and 205. So it's not like you can't survive at that weight in the NFL. Cousins, though, knows how to absorb hits. He knows how to take the hits. He knows how to get rid of the ball. He knows how to get down. His injury stemmed from a non-contact injury. But Cousins has always protected himself well playing, and he's a slighter guy than Jayden Daniels. So can he get to that point? And I think that's something that they can help him with, but he does have the other skills. So, but again, the only reason I bring up the sacks, because I think I was interested in that number. Why did that happen? And when you look it over, it's not, to me, it's not as big a concern as it would be for some other players. But again, I will stress that when I talk to coaches, they do not bring up that number. Now, again, if I hate saying the word again, if a guy continues to hold the ball too long, they would bring that up. And that's when they would say they wouldn't bring up the pressure to sack ratio percentage per se, but it'd be the same thing. You're saying the same thing, just in a different language. But I just don't see that I didn't see the same thing with Daniels. The other thing is hand size, measured at 9 3/8. So who it's bigger than? Tom Brady. Take it from there. It's also bigger than Patrick Mahomes. His hands are bigger than Joe Burrow's, Jared Goff's. In other words, his hand size is fine. And so I don't think you have to worry about anything like that. So be curious to see where it goes. And I'm going to have more and more on Jayden Daniels and what I heard from the owners' meetings about him and from others and about these quarterbacks in general. But I just wanted to go over the pro day. And one other thing to talk about today, because it made news, is what happened with the Washington Capitals and Washington Wizards staying in the district. So a few weeks ago, that the deal with Virginia and in Potomac Yards area started to fall apart. And the only thing that matters here is how does it affect the Commanders? So at that time, I remember talking to somebody who was very familiar with all these discussions, and his thing was, this means they're going to go to Maryland. Now, nothing is done. So that's not a report. It's just there was one person's opinion that would happen, but there's the logic kind of can lead you right now to that point. And that's clearly Virginia doesn't have the appetite to spend the money to lure pro sports teams. They do not have a stadium authority right now, and I don't think they can. I'm not sure that they could form one soon enough to really make a dent in this situation. It might take a year to do that. And then, so how long are the Commanders willing to wait for a stadium if they know the state does not have the appetite to provide the money to lure them? Then you look at RFK. Well, the district is, the Washington Caps and Wizards are getting, I think it's like just a little over 500 million from the city to help with costs for the arena, et cetera. What would they have to give to the Commanders to get down to the old RFK site? Can they do that? That would be pretty much a major undertaking. I think it would be, I don't know where that's going to go, but I think you can understand why people think it's probably, it's looking like going to go back to FedEx Field in Landover and build a stadium there. Nothing is a done deal. And one person I talked to said that the team needs to see this through with the district, because if there's a chance to get down to RFK, you still want to see that through to at least exhaust the possibility and let the fan base know, hey, we tried. And but will that bill pass Congress to lease the land back to the district? Will the DC council then, how would they react? Will the city again want to invest a lot of money into helping build a stadium at the RFK site to lure the Commanders? Could the Commanders find other ways to finance some of that money, from other private investors? I don't know. But that's why it looks like that's why people certainly think that Maryland could be the team could be the site that's the leader in the clubhouse at this point. But I still think we've got about another year to go through all this before they really know. But what we know is with this situation, there's been a lot of twists and turns. Heck, in December, it was, oh my gosh, the Wizards and Caps are going to Virginia. And that's a good sign. That could help the Commanders get back to RFK. Well, a couple months later, here we are, and now we're back to it could be there are obstacles in the way. There are big obstacles in the way. So anyway, more to come on that. Nothing is finalized by any means. Do not take any of this as a report. It's just trying to analyze how it looks after what's going on there. Anyway, but today, the big day was Jayden Daniels Pro Day. And as we know, the Commanders were well represented there. And he's certainly a strong person of interest for that number 2 pick. So I'll be back on Friday with another episode. So I'll talk to you next time.